Hello everybody. If you are new to this channel, my name is Sean Lei, and I am a National Master here in Canada. Today, I have another incredible video brought to you by another comment suggested here. Today, I'll be having my top 3 favorite gambits for white. 2 of these I still actively play in my tournament play today. If you enjoy this video, make sure to smash that like button. And if we reach 20 likes on this video, I will make sure to upload another 3 gambits, this time for black though. And 2 of those openings, 2 of those gambits are ones that I like to play personally myself too. Now, on to the very first gambit here for white. The first gambit that I want to show you is a very old but still very good one. The first one I want to show you for white begins with e4, your opponent plays pawn e5, and then you play f4. This is the very old, very classic King's Gambit. Now the King's Gambit nowadays has kind of gone out of fashion, as it kind of goes against many of the points that you guys learn as beginners or intermediate players. You don't want to be moving this f-pawn over here, because when you move this f-pawn, the opponent's queen has potential to take advantage of your king. Your king is open. Generally, that's not a very good thing. But the thing is, for beginners, your opponent can't really take advantage of that. And one of the variations actually is if black captures us and goes into the King's Gambit accepted, we can play a move bishop c4, allowing our opponent to go queen h4 check. Now, we can't play g3, because if we play g3, they can just capture us, and we cannot capture back, because the queen will capture our rook. So what is the point of this opening, you might be wondering? Isn't this queen checking here really bad for us? The idea is we can move our king to f1. Our king is actually quite safe on f1, and our opponent moved the queen out very early. In fact, it's a very famous chess game. In fact, created by Anderson, I believe, one of the oldest good chess players, and one of the best attackers of all time, who played this variation and destroyed his opponent. In fact, this variation, I'm fairly sure, is called is one that Fischer liked to play as well, back when he was very, very, very strong. But this isn't the variation I want to show you today. The variation I want to show you today is one that follows more basic chess principles, moving a knight towards the center and stopping the queen check on h4. Now you might be wondering to yourself, why in the world would somebody even play a gambit in the first place? Why sacrifice a pawn? If you see in this position, when our opponent captures a pawn, we get to develop our pieces very fast. And if our opponent is an unsuspecting player, a player who's not very new to this game, they might think they're just better because they have a pawn. But in chess, the quality of pawns is often more important than the number of pawns you own. Let's say your opponent plays the move knight c6. Now imagine we get this d4 move in. Look at our center here. It's amazing. We're controlling all 4 squares in our opponent's camp, while he controls absolutely nothing because his center pawn is gone. We have massive space advantage. Our bishop will soon come out to c4, attack the weak f7 pawn, we can castle, and not to say we won't ever get this pawn back, because imagine, how is he going to defend this pawn? If he plays a silly looking move like this, we just say, go away, Mr. Bishop, and when the bishop runs away, we get the pawn back with our space advantage. If our opponent plays really weird moves like, I don't know, g5, well, these moves aren't very good either, because this weakens these squares over here, the dark squares. And we can always play moves like h4 to undermine our opponent's side attack. And this pawn is soon lost as well. Now, that's if our opponent plays silly moves, right? But you might be wondering, what if our opponent doesn't capture us? What if he just plays a random move? Now, the question is, what random moves could he make? Let's say he plays knight to c6, defending his pawn. Now, what we can just play here is a very simple knight f3 and just ask, hey, you can still capture a pawn, and if you capture, guess what? We're in the same variation that we went to before. If you don't capture a pawn, well, we're threatening to capture it again for free. Our knight is also attacking it over here. What if our opponent defends it, like b6? Well, now this bishop on f8 is bad. And we can always play moves like d4 later on. We can play knight c3, bishop c4. And let me ask you, whose position looks better here? He can't. This pawn is as if it's protected. He can't ever take it, otherwise we get our center. What if our opponent plays here? Well, guess what? Our pawn's defended. It's no longer a gambit. Except now we have more space in the center. We can castle our king with, with like this, and now all of a sudden we have an open f-file as well. This position is quite good. Now, the thing is, a lot of people don't play this nowadays because there are variations that can equalize immediately for black. But none of these variations are lost for white, or in fact bad. In fact, one of the most well-known counter gambits, which is called the Folkbeer counter gambit over here, is very common, but it's just equal here. And as long as you learn the lines here, you'll be fine as white. You'll have a good game no matter what. But if your opponent has no clue what he's doing, and just accepts the pawn immediately, and lets you gain a massive space advantage, you'll be playing soon not down a pawn. In fact, you'll get your pawns back, you get to develop your pieces, get a strong center advantage, and you guys will have an amazing game, I promise you. Now, I don't play the King's Gambit, but this second gambit that I play isn't really a gambit. It can be if your opponent plays optimal moves, but at the basic level, the real question is, how many of your opponents will be playing optimal moves? Now, you'll place e4 again, but what if your opponent doesn't play the move e5, the most common move at the beginning level, but plays the second most common move, the Sicilian Defense? Now here, you're going to begin very normal. You're going to play knight f3. And no matter what your opponent plays, whether or not it's g6, d6, or knight c6, I'm going to teach you this variation that I personally play and confuse people even at my level. Even FIDE Masters, National Masters, and even 2000 rated players, they all get confused. Now, the variation I want to specifically talk about is d6, the most common one. So, what you're going to play is c3, which is called the delayed Alapin variation. Now, the delayed Alapin I think is very strong because your opponent might get very, very, very confused about what to do. In fact, I've been in a 2100 in this position, or maybe 2200 rated player in this position in a few moves. I'll show you the variation. Now, that wasn't the Gambit variation, but it was a super cool game that I really want to show you guys. My opponent played the move knight c6, allowing me to get a massive center over here. He captured, I captured, bishop g4, and then I played d5. Now, the knight has a couple moves it can go through, but the funny thing is, all of them are lost. I mean, not all of them are lost, only one of them is good, and that's this one over here. Now, my opponent played this immediately, and after I played my next move, my opponent resigned. Can you guys think about what the best move is here? And how you can make a super high rated player resign here? Give yourself a couple seconds. Pause your clock if you need any more time, because I'm about to tell you the answer right now. What I played was knight takes e5, and you might be wondering, how's that possible? You're pinned over here. And the idea is, if your opponent captures here, you have this amazing check over here. Check. And now the king is kind of stuck. It's not checkmate because he can block, but you can take the queen here, check, defended by the knight. King moves here, and you can take this pawn over here, forking the king and rook. Now, my question for you is, what is the best move here? In this position, would you take the rook that's worth 5 points, or the bishop that is worth 3? Give yourself a couple seconds. And the best move is take the bishop. Now, the reason why the bishop is best is because this rook is stuck. It cannot move. While this bishop over here can move. So if you take the knight, his bishop goes free. But if you take his bishop, ask yourself, is this rook going anywhere? No, it is not. But that's not the gambit. It's just a game I played against somebody much higher rated. If your opponent plays weird moves like knight c6, or I don't know, e6, just play d4. Get a massive space advantage. Play with that space advantage. You have a very comfortable, very easy game to play. Now, what is the gambit variation, you ask? It's this, knight f6, which is the main move in this variation. Now, knight f6 is the main move, but it's still very tricky for black to play. If he does not play properly, he'll lose. In fact, against a 1900 rated player here, I played, the main move is bishop e2, which I suggest for you guys, and my opponent took this silly pawn on e4. Now I want you guys to think for 5 seconds. Again, pause the clock if you have to. How do you win this knight over here? Alright, it's a simple queen e4, forking the king, forking the knight. Easy game. Now, of course your opponent's not that silly, right? So he'll play knight c6, which is the main move, and you play d4. Now you might be wondering, wait a second, that's just a free pawn still. No, it's not. Think again why it's not a free pawn? This is a clearance tactic. So we're going to clear the squares over here, and then we're going to clear this knight away. The knight goes anywhere, let's say there. Guess what? The king and knight are forked together again. So, obviously your opponents can't do that. So after you play d4, the best move is c takes, and now knight takes. And you might be wondering, doesn't this work still? The answer is no. But it's still the move you play, so it's not that hard to remember. Your opponent plays queen a5 check. You play knight c3. He captures your knights. You capture back. He captures bishop d2, defending your rook and attacking the queen. So the queen has to move away, then you take the knight. So you can't do that. So he has to move the knight first. And when you capture, he captures here. Bishop d2, queen takes, castle, queen here. Now you might be thinking to yourself, wait a second, that's a bit weird. You're down quite a bit of pawns. In fact, you're down 3 pawns in this position. And with the next move, rook b1, you can be down another pawn. How can this position be good? The idea is the black's king's completely still stuck in the center. Your piece is super developed. You play this move over here, his king can't castle anymore. Your pieces are coming in. They're destroying your opponent. What's he gonna do? The question is, it's very difficult. In fact, the game can continue with moves like, let's just say, we can play a simple move like, I don't know, queen here. And your opponent has a lot of tough questions to ask. If he does a silly move like take your free bishop, you checkmate him. If he plays a move like e6, you could take on f7, threatening his king still, because all of a sudden, if he takes our bishop still, we can still play this, threatening checkmate over here. In fact, it's unstoppable checkmate. So, our opponent is always on his toes, and if he does not play properly, he will lose the game extremely quickly, and you'll be the one having all the fun playing to checkmate your opponent, while opponent's just having a silly time with all his silly pieces sleeping at home over here. These pieces haven't moved, nor will they ever move, as his king is bouncing around like he's a kid in a bouncy castle. Not very good. Now, this gambit doesn't happen all the time. In fact, my opponents, I've only played it like 5 times. But the times that they don't play this is actually the best decision black can play for. You get massive space advantage, as I showed you. A lot of my opponents get so scared they play g6, and all of a sudden, guess what? I get space advantage here. And I've never lost a game that I've had, or drawn a game that I had this space advantage. Very easy to play with. It's black who has to come up with all the difficult decisions. Now the final gambit I want to show you guys is the gambit that I also still play today. It's called the Scotch Gambit. Now you guys might know the Scotch is a very normal opening after d4, e takes d4. After that, we get to play bishop c4 instead of capturing back and going to a normal game. And the idea is we're just going to attack your f7 pawn. We're going to develop the pieces so fast. And black is the one who has to think about what he has to do. One misstep and it's all over. In fact, in this opening, I've never lost a game in my professional career. If an opponent plays a silly move like bishop e7, I've beaten the 1700 this way. c3. If you think capturing is the best way, queen d5, threatening this pawn, and the only way to defend is here. And if that happens, you can just capture the knight for free. And white is in a completely dominating position. Nothing that black can do. Now, the Scotch Gambit is a very complicated opening with many different variations. So if you want me to make an episode about that variation, that opening, make sure to smash that like button. Leave a comment below on what you want to see in the next video. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you have any questions again, any comments, or anything, just leave them below, or just email me at seanleichessdevelopment@gmail.com. If you guys do that, I'll make sure to heart your comment. I'll make sure to produce the video that you guys want. Thank you so much, everybody. I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and I hope you guys all learned something very important from this video.